Outer Wilds is a phenomenal game. The impression you get from it at face value, and the way it may have been described to you before picking it up, is something along the lines of a solar system simulation adventure, which likely puts something similar to a game like Kerbal Space Program in your head. A space simulator game dedicated to accurately emulating the experience of space travel. And it's hard to pitch the game to somebody beyond that premise because it feels like part of the Outer Wilds' magic is uncovering how much more there is to it than just a space simulator. The way I'd put it is that in actuality, the adventure part of the pitch should be more heavily emphasized than the simulation part. Because while Outer Wilds is outrageously dedicated to simulating the gravitational physics of a miniaturized solar system, the game is also a more personal experience, driven by story and writing. And one of the most satisfying parts of the personal experience Outer Wilds delivers was its ending. Seeing the story conclude into such a thematic payoff, I never would have guessed before finishing it that Outer Wilds would be one of the most touching games I've ever played. The majority of Outer Wilds is about discovering information related to the efforts of the Nomai species, but it isn't just lore dumps of their history. The information gained is translations of their own communications with each other, which, while primarily acting as clues to make further discoveries and connections within the game, also tell deeply personal stories about the species as characters. Nearly every communication is labeled by name, so you get accustomed to each of the Nomai responsible for the technologies they left behind in the Outer Wilds solar system, along with touching insight into their personalities and relationships. Above all else though, the passion they had for making progress to science and discovery is very genuinely felt the more and more you explore their texts, and realize how practically every significant technical landmark in the solar system was their doing. Their passion is felt in just how much they accomplished across an entire solar system for the sake of one goal: to answer the burning question of what the eye of the universe is. It's a mission that defines them, given that it's the very reason they ended up in the Outer Wilds solar system in the first place. And though they themselves could not complete their mission, you wouldn't have been capable of finishing the job without all their work helping you along the way. This extends beyond the Nomai to the other characters in your own species too. All the tools and techniques you have right from the start of the game, the mini probe that always returns to you, the signal scope that locates different types of frequencies, the spaceship you use throughout the entire journey. They weren't made by you alone. Your character rides on the backs of the previous Hearthian astronauts, adding on top of their contributions to the Outer Wilds Ventures program with your own. As you explore each planet in the solar system and come across each of your fellow Ventures members, gaining insight acquired by them, you can feel their passion in journeying out into the unknown, passing their knowledge and wisdom onto you as the new member, hoping it will lead to the team as a whole making further discoveries. This is the first point the ending of Outer Wilds makes. Discoveries are almost never truly to the credit of one individual. The journey and experience of Outer Wilds wouldn't be possible without the efforts made by the other characters within the game, and so they too are acknowledged in its grand conclusion. As the quantum eye of the universe shapes into your own familiar woodsy homeland, complete with campfire, your fellow Ventures members, and even the last technically living Nomai are present with you to bask in the discovery that culminated from all of your efforts together. The game ends on a scene of everyone playing a combined performance, each with the instrument that you've seen them play during your journey. Together, they make the theme song for the game the whole piece that it is. Outer Wilds caps off the journey reminding the player that you didn't accomplish it all on your own, despite much of the game being played in physical isolation on these lonely planets. You are not the sole person responsible for finding the eye and being able to create the new universe. Everyone who helped you make the start of your journey all the way to the end of it contributed to your accomplishment. The second point the ending makes, I've already partially mentioned. As you reach the center of the Eye of the Universe, it becomes a quantum reflection of the museum observatory from your own village. It then transitions into a vast woodsy forest, with the trees and earth similar to Timber Hearth, which is reminiscent of something from earlier in the game. As you changed which planet the quantum moon was orbiting, it also changed its appearance to imitate the visual elements of that particular planet. It adopts the identity of what it's currently in contact with, in a sense. I believe the ending expresses that this idea extends beyond the moon to the Eye of the Universe itself. The Eye provides the mechanics for the creation of a new universe. I think that much is given explicitly from the ending. The ending also shows that it presents those mechanics of creating a new universe in a way that whatever is in contact with it is capable of comprehending. In the Hearthian protagonist's case, the Eye accomplishes this by relating its appearance to what is familiar to them, i.e., changing to the appearance of their home planet and friends. The second point Outer Wilds' ending makes is a reminder that the journey you've made is a personal one. In spite of all the extraordinary, life-changing things you've seen along the way, they are still experiences shaped by you personally. You play Outer Wilds as a Hearthian character, meant to act as a self-insert, but they're still defined enough by the story to express their own perception of the journey they've been through, which is presented in the Eye changing to relate to their perception of the universe. And the way the Hearthian perceives the universe is not as the vast blackness of space that it literally is, but as a vast forest of endless trees, the Outer Wilds beyond the wilds of their own home. When I first started the game, I was initially turned off by its introduction. The naturalistic and bland aesthetic of the village was kind of pushing me away from it. I only got hooked on the game after launching for the first time and discovering the exciting aesthetics of the other bodies in the solar system. But by the end of the game, I found the Eye imitating the forested area of the village to be almost comforting, as it took on the form of where every loop began. Over the course of several loops, that starting destination became pleasantly familiar, just as it already was familiar to the Hearthian. The journey your character makes is remarkable, going from the simple life in a quaint village to the alien worlds that so starkly contrast that simplicity, to ending up at the very literal ends of the universe. And they still see it all through that lens of just being unfamiliar land outside home. Outer Wilds posits that it's likely impossible to truly grasp everything out there in the universe the way that it really is, like how the Hearthian was unable to comprehend the Eye's true form. But that's okay, because the perception and perspective we can have on our discoveries will still be meaningful to us. Exploring the unknown is worth it, even when you don't completely understand what it is you've discovered. Whatever ways you're capable of shaping your findings and learning from them matters to you. Outer Wilds says, expand your horizons beyond what's familiar, beyond what you consider to be home. Concluding with what is effectively a metaphorical title drop could not have been a more perfect ending to the game. At its core, Outer Wilds is a simulated solar system experience. But at its heart, it's an adventure driven by a passionate, non-linear narrative. It is furiously addicting to connect the dots in this game, finding something on one planet and linking that to something located elsewhere, or keeping in mind what it could be related to for things you haven't yet come across, and it's astounding that all of these dots aren't tangible rewards. Everything you collect in the game is purely information, which helps the player remain focused on exploring more broadly, rather than restricting that exploration down to finding specific things. You're not hunting down a collectible that could be hidden in the corner of a building, you're looking at the building itself, what it is, what's inside it, where it's located on the planet, learning about its purpose and origin. The only things that could be compared to tangible items are the Nomai text logs on the walls and the projection stones. It's pretty inevitable that the player will start scanning for these immediately upon entering new spaces because they're consistent elements throughout the game. But they aren't pursued as rewards to be collected and then moved on from. They provide context to the spaces they inhabit, which contributes to the goal of you exploring these spaces themselves for new information. What's also impressive is how Outer Wilds manages to make discovering that raw information on the various planets so captivating. The way it's presented plays a big part in encouraging you to want to explore the solar system in the first place. Again, the Nomai texts aren't raw lore dumps. They're communication dialogues from the Nomai as individual, uniquely written characters. You're given compelling stories through the Nomai texts, and within all of them, they share a sense of drive and passion toward that ultimate goal. The reason you're so interested in finding the Eye of the Universe is because the Nomai were so interested in finding it. Their own passion for discovery is the primary motivation for the player to play Outer Wilds, and you relate more to that passion being delivered through individual characters rather than the game itself instructing you on what you're supposed to explore. The game's refusal to give you a defined goal heightens the writing of the Nomai characters acting as your primary motivation, and it's also what allows the journey of Outer Wilds to be so personal, as its open-endedness of an entire solar system allows players to approach exploration distinctly from each other. Your character's story is the adventure of discovering the Nomai's unsuccessful quest to find the Eye, and then being somebody who is not only capable of finishing that quest, but also being somebody that is willing to. Your fellow Outer Wilds Ventures members contribute to motivating you as well because they also care about exploring, much like the Nomai. However, they also represent the idea of stopping short. Each member remains on one planet, either because they couldn't progress any further in their exploration, or they decided that that was the extent they wanted to explore. The character player is different thanks to the new Nomai translator they have, allowing them to explore further than any of the previous Ventures members. Because you're capable of exploring further than any other member or even Nomai has in the quest to find the Eye, you're driven to do it because you know you can, not because somebody else explicitly told you to do it. Both the information and motivation you find in Outer Wilds is character-driven, which is what makes the heartfelt ending so satisfying. Picture an Outer Wilds without the Hearthians on the other planets to talk to. Rather than all the Nomai texts being diaries of past conversation, imagine it all being delivered in the same static perspective. And then think about having the entire ending cut out, having the universe reset as soon as the Eye is reached. It'd be the same solar system sim explorer, but it wouldn't be the same game. Outer Wilds wouldn't be anywhere near as enthralling if it didn't have its narrative and characters. Above everything else, the game is a story about discovery that the player gets to live out by controlling the silent Hearthian protagonist. It's a very personal adventure, and that's why the ending's so special, for wrapping the game up with what made it a personal adventure, by acknowledging those who helped you along the way, and also acknowledging that this was your journey, that the sights you saw and discoveries you made within the game mattered to you, because the adventure was your own experience that you made for yourself.